What's up, Matt from Fab here. Today's video is going to be about welding with budget welders. I'd asked the question of what type of welding videos people wanted to see, and a common request was to do some welding with some really cheap welding equipment. So I've been to Extreme Plasma and picked up the cheapest MIG welder that I could get, and this was £190 for a complete setup with MIG torch, all the leads. Also comes with a stick welding torch, and it's just a very basic little MIG machine. It only takes these little small rolls, and you've got a 0.6 and a 0.8 feed roller in there. Very small, very compact, very lightweight. You've just got the basic functions on the front: wire feed, voltage, and then you've got your switches to switch it from MIG mode, TIG mode, and MMA, which is stick. You can do TIG with it. It doesn't come with a TIG torch though. So you can reverse the polarity on your ground for welding with flux core wire, so you don't have to use gas with it. The torch cannot be removed. This is quite common on really cheap machines. The torch is actually hardwired into the machine, so it's very difficult to replace the torch without disconnecting it from the machine, which is worth considering. The torch itself feels, you know, like a cheap torch would. So the machine recommends a maximum thickness of 2 mil, so it's going to be ideal for car body repair, that kind of thing. I'd be willing to bet you can weld thicker material with it, so we'll have a go at some thicker stuff. So I've just turned the gas on. I'm not sure if you can hear, but it's leaking on the solenoid or on the back of the fitting itself inside the machine, so you can hear there's gas actually coming out of that. So that's going to run your gas out really quickly, unless you're turning your gas off in between every sort of thing you do with it. I'd like to think that's just an issue with this machine and not an issue with every single one of these. Right, so what I'm going to do is run through, find some good settings for a few different thicknesses of material, and then we're going to max it right out, see what it'll do. We'll start with some 1 mil. So it's got quite a crisp start on it, so when you're doing like pulse tacks for really thin stuff, it does actually work quite nicely for that. It seems to be feeding the wire well. It's got fairly strong sort of wire feed on it, which seems smooth enough. This is some 1.5. I'll turn it up a bit now. So that's 1.5 mil. I'm almost maxed out on the wire feed speed. I've got the voltage set to about 18.5 volts. But you could definitely weld thicker material than that with that setting. Just some 2 mil. Right, so as you can see, that is a really nice, smooth, consistent weld. It feeds the wire perfectly and does really exactly what you would expect. I've got the wire feed maxed out there, so I can't really go any higher. I could crank the voltage up a bit, but then my setting would be not quite where I would like it. But I will do that in a minute just for an experiment. But I'm going to weld some thicker stuff now, and I'm just going to show you how you could weld some thick stuff if you had to and you only had a small machine. So this is some 6mm plate. What I did there was the first weld I ran, you could see was way too cold. It wasn't biting into the material properly, and it was bunched up where the weld was kind of sitting on top of the plate. I ran a second one straight along the bottom of it, which once you get a bit more heat going into it, you could see that was actually biting into the plate much better. And then I ran a third bead along the top. So there's a big build-up of weld and a lot of heat gone into it. So we'll attempt to smash this off and see if you can break it. I'm not recommending that if you are intending on welding thick plate, you should go and buy something like this. I'm just showing that if you had to, you know, fix your garden gate or something and it was a bit thicker, that you could do it. This is a piece of 5mm wool box. We'll do another little destructive test with this. What I'm going to do now is one of the things you commonly hear about with machines is duty cycle, and that's usually a selling point that people mention about their machines, and that is basically the amount of time that you can weld without the machine cutting out and needing to cool down, so before it overheats. Unless you're doing production welding, it's unlikely you're ever going to max any machine out really, but I'm going to turn the machine up to full on both settings, and then I'm going to attempt to weld out this whole piece. And I think, you know, if you're buying a machine like that, it's unlikely you're going to need to weld anything longer than that in one go. We'll see whether the machine overheats and cuts out. Right, so that was a weld on full blast, 300mm long. So, I mean, I don't often do welds really any longer than that in one go. Didn't cut out, didn't overheat. So overall, I'm actually quite impressed with it, with the how consistently it feeds the wire. It's got a nice arc. The only thing that lets it down is obviously the fact that the gas is leaking on this solenoid, and that's going to waste a lot of gas. I hope that that's an issue just with this one and that they don't all do that, and I will ask the question and get Rob at Extreme to check another one just to see if that is a common issue with them. Other than that, I think that shows what you can sort of do with a machine that costs less than 200 quid. It shows that it's perfectly good enough to get you going. The main difference between obviously a budget machine and a more expensive advanced machine, the main noticeable difference, you could have a very expensive basic machine that is just built to a much higher standard, better quality parts, something that's going to last if you were using it every day in an industrial environment, that could cost 10 times the price of this. They essentially both do the same thing. It's the same as if you went out and bought a bike. You could buy a budget bike, really expensive bike. Both bikes are going to get you down the road. Depends how much you want to invest in it. We'll do some destructive testing on these now, put them in the vise and see if we can smash them apart, but I don't think that we will be able to. So as you can see, it's completely deformed the piece I've welded it to. Hasn't broke the weld off, hasn't cracked the weld anywhere. Still completely attached to the 5mm. So that's a successful test. So I completely bent that over. This bit's hitting the jaw of the vise now, so I can't go any further, but I think I've proved my point. That's pretty well stuck on there. So for a machine that's spec'd to max out at 2mm, I've successfully glued together some 6mm, but as I said, I wouldn't recommend buying a machine like this to weld thick material. So I hope that was helpful to anyone that's looking to get themselves a cheap welder and have a go at welding. I'll put a link to Extreme Plasma in the description box, and if you use the code ERCHFAB you can get yourself a discount. If you want to try and win yourself some welding equipment, I'm constantly running competitions for welding and fabrication equipment. You'll find the details to that in the description box or on my website, erchfab.com. That's going to be it for this one. Cheers for watching. See you on the next one.